Clara May Thornton dropped to her knees in the mud outside the pharmacy, her son's medicine bottle clutched to her chest. $3.40. That's what stood between her boy and another week of fever. She had 80 cents in her pocket and nothing left to sell. A stranger's boots stopped in front of her. Worn leather, dusty spurs. "Ma'am, you all right?" She looked up at the tall man with gray-blue eyes and a week-old beard. She didn't know it yet, but this drifter would become her husband before sunset, and the secret he carried would shatter everything she thought she knew about survival, pride, and love. If you want to see how one desperate choice changed this widow's life forever, subscribe now and stay until the end. Drop a comment telling me what city you're watching from. I love seeing how far these stories travel. Now let me take you back to the beginning. Wyoming Territory. Summer 1883. The letter came on a Tuesday. Clara stood at the stove stirring a thin potato soup when Samuel ran in waving the envelope like a flag. "Mama, the postman came." She wiped her hands on her apron and took the letter. The return address made her stomach drop. First National Bank of Cheyenne. "Go check on Grandma, sweetheart." "But Mama..." "Now Samuel." The boy's face fell, but he shuffled toward the back room where Martha Thornton lay in her narrow bed, fighting for every breath. Clara broke the seal. Her eyes moved across the words, and each line hit like a hammer blow. Final notice. Outstanding balance. $847.32. Failure to remit payment within 30 days will result in seizure of property and assets. $847. Her dead husband's debt. Thomas had borrowed against everything: the house, the land, even the mule to chase his dream of striking silver in the mines. 3 years later, all she had to show for that dream was a grave marker on the hill and a stack of bills she couldn't pay. Clara folded the letter and shoved it in her apron pocket. She wouldn't cry. Crying didn't put food on the table. The soup bubbled. She stirred it mechanically, her mind racing through the same impossible calculations she ran every night. $37 in the coffee tin. The sewing work brought in maybe $4 a week if she was lucky. Her mother's medicine cost $2 a bottle, and the doctor wanted $5 every visit. The numbers never added up. They never would. Martha's coughing started again, deep and wet, rattling through the thin walls like a death rattle. Clara grabbed the medicine bottle from the shelf. Empty. She'd given her mother the last dose yesterday morning. "Samuel," she called. "Stay with Grandma. I'm going to town." The boy appeared in the doorway, his face pale. "Is Grandma gonna be okay?" Clara knelt down and brushed the hair from his forehead. He had Thomas's eyes dark brown, too serious for a 5-year-old. He'd seen too much death already. His father lowered into the ground, his grandmother fading by the day. "Grandma's strong," Clara said. "She just needs her medicine. I'll be back soon." "Promise?" "Promise." She kissed his forehead and grabbed her shawl. The summer heat didn't require it, but the thin fabric had deep pockets good for hiding how little money she carried. The walk to town took 20 minutes. Clara kept her head down, avoiding the looks from the women who gathered on porches to gossip. She knew what they said about her. Poor Clara Thornton. Husband dead, mother dying, boy running wild. Did you hear the bank's about to take her house? Such a shame. She used to be a teacher, you know. Educated. Now look at her. She pushed through the door of Miller's pharmacy. The bell jangled overhead. Old Mr. Miller looked up from his ledger. His face tightened when he saw her. "Mrs. Thornton." "Mr. Miller, I need another bottle of my mother's medicine." He didn't move toward the shelf. "That'll be $3.40. Clara reached into her pocket. Her fingers found the coins she'd counted 6 times that morning. 80 cents. She'd known before she left the house it wouldn't be enough, but she'd hoped, prayed that somehow the numbers would change. "I have 80 cents now," she said quietly. "I can bring the rest by Friday. Mrs. Patterson owes me for the dress I'm mending and— I'm sorry, Mrs. Thornton. Miller's voice wasn't unkind, but it wasn't soft either. You still owe me from last month. I can't keep extending credit. Please. The word came out smaller than she intended. My mother needs that medicine. Without it— I understand your situation, but I have a business to run. I have my own bills to pay. Clara's hands trembled. She pressed them flat against the counter to steady herself. Mr. Miller, I'm asking you, begging you to help me. I'll pay every cent I owe. I just need more time. The pharmacist shook his head slowly. I'm sorry. I truly am. Clara walked out of the pharmacy in a daze. The main street of Thornton Flat, named after Thomas's grandfather, one of the town's founders back when the Thornton name meant something, stretched before her. People moved past on horses and wagons. Children laughed somewhere. Life went on. She stopped in the middle of the boardwalk. The sun beat down on her shoulders, but she felt cold. So cold. $3.40. Her mother would die without that medicine. Not in some distant future. Not eventually. Soon. Maybe days. Clara's knees buckled. She caught herself on a hitching post, then sank down to the ground, her back against the rough wood. Her hand found the empty medicine bottle in her pocket, and she clutched it to her chest like a prayer. God, please, tell me what to do. Show me a way. No answer came. Just the dust and the heat and the endless grinding weight of everything she couldn't fix. Ma'am? The voice came from above her. Clara looked up. A man stood there blocking the sun. Tall, broad shoulders. He wore a dusty leather coat and canvas trousers, the kind working men wore. A week's worth of dark beard shadowed his jaw. His eyes were gray-blue like storm clouds over the mountains. You all right? He asked. I'm fine. Clara pushed herself to her feet, brushing dirt from her skirt. Just needed to rest a moment. The man didn't move. He studied her face with an intensity that made her uncomfortable. You don't look fine, he said plainly. You look like someone who just got real bad news. That's none of your concern, mister. Eli. He touched the brim of his hat. Name's Eli Cormack. I work horses for the Jameson Ranch up north. Just came into town for supplies. Good for you. Clara turned to walk away. Ma'am? She stopped. That medicine bottle you're holding. Miller wouldn't fill it. Clara spun around. Were you listening to my private business? Wasn't trying to. Sound carries in this town. He paused. How much do you need? I don't take charity from strangers. Didn't offer charity. Asked how much you need. Clara's jaw tightened. Everything in her wanted to tell this man to mind his own affairs and walk away with her dignity intact. But dignity didn't cure her mother's lungs. Dignity didn't keep Samuel fed. $3.40, she said quietly. Eli Cormack reached into his coat and pulled out a small leather pouch. He counted out coins and held them toward her. No. Clara stepped back. I told you I don't take charity. Then call it a loan. I can't pay you back. I don't have anything. Everyone has something. His eyes held hers. You could pay me back in work. Mending, cooking, whatever you do. You don't even know me. I know you're standing in the street with an empty bottle and a sick family member who needs medicine. I know you're too proud to beg, but too desperate to walk away. He extended his hand again. Take the money, Mrs. Thornton, Clara Thornton. Take the money, Mrs. Thornton. Get the medicine. We can work out the rest later. Clara looked at the coins in his calloused palm. 3 silver dollars and some change. Such a small amount. Such an impossible sum. She took it. That evening, Clara sat by her mother's bed and spooned medicine between her cracked lips. That's it, Mama. Just a little more. Martha swallowed weakly. Her hand, thin as paper, found Clara's wrist. Where did you get the money? Her voice was barely a whisper. Don't worry about that. Clara May. The old woman's eyes sharpened despite her fever. I wasn't born yesterday. Miller hasn't given you credit in weeks. Where did this come from? Clara hesitated. A man in town, a stranger. He loaned me the money. A stranger? Martha's brow furrowed. What kind of stranger? A horsebreaker, works for the Jameson Ranch. And what does this horsebreaker expect in return? Work, mending, he said, cooking. Martha was quiet for a long moment. Then she squeezed Clara's hand with surprising strength. Be careful, daughter. Men don't give something for nothing. Not in this world. I know, Mama. Your father was a good man. God rest him. Thomas. Martha's voice trailed off. They both knew what Thomas had been. Charming, reckless, full of dreams that cost more than they were worth. I won't make the same mistakes, Clara said. See that you don't. The next morning, Clara found Eli Cormack waiting outside her door. She stopped on the porch, Samuel hiding behind her skirt. The boy peered at the stranger with wary eyes. Mr. Cormack, what are you doing here? He removed his hat. Came to see about that debt. It's been one day. I don't have... Not asking for money. He shifted his weight, looking almost uncomfortable. I have a proposition. Might sound strange. Hear me out before you say no. Clara's spine stiffened. She knew what kind of propositions men made to desperate widows. I'm not that kind of woman, Mr. Cormack. His face colored slightly. That's not... He cleared his throat. Ma'am, I'm asking you to marry me. Clara stared at him. Samuel tugged her skirt. Mama, what's he saying? Hush, sweetheart. She didn't take her eyes off Eli. You've lost your mind. Maybe, but hear me out. He took a breath. I've got land, a small spread up in the mountains. I need a wife to help me work it, keep house, build something real. You need money for your mother's medicine, a future for your boy. We could help each other. We're strangers. Strangers can become something else given time. Clara laughed a hard, bitter sound. You want me to marry you for land, for money. I want you to marry me because you're strong. His voice was steady now, surer. I watched you in town yesterday. Watched how you carried yourself even when everything was falling apart. Most women would have cried, begged. You got up, brushed off the dirt, and kept fighting. That's not strength. That's stubbornness. Maybe they're the same thing. He stepped closer. Mrs. Thornton, Clara, I ain't offering you a fairy tale. I'm offering you a chance, a real one. I'll pay off your husband's debts, make sure your mother gets the care she needs, give your boy a home with land and horses and room to grow. And what do you get? A partner. Someone to stand beside me when things get hard. Someone who won't run when the winters come. Clara's head was spinning. This couldn't be real. Things like this didn't happen to women like her, broken poor, drowning in debt. I need to think, she said. Fair enough. Eli put his hat back on. I'll be at the livery stable till noon tomorrow. If you want to talk more, find me there. If not... He shrugged. No hard feelings. The money's still a loan. Pay me back when you can. He tipped his hat to Samuel. Take care of your mama, son. Then he walked away, his boots crunching on the dry grass, and Clara watched him go, with her heart pounding against her ribs. That night, she didn't sleep. She sat at the kitchen table with a stub of candle and the bank's letter spread before her. The numbers hadn't changed. The deadline hadn't moved. In 30 days, she and Samuel and Martha would be out on the street with nothing but the clothes on their backs. A stranger wants to marry me. A horsebreaker with calloused hands and storm-colored eyes. He wants to pay my debts and give my son a home. Every practical bone in her body screamed that it was foolish. Dangerous. That she didn't know this man from Adam. But what was the alternative? Watch her mother die. Lose her home. See Samuel sent to some orphanage while she worked herself to death in a laundry. Or worse. Clara thought about her wedding to Thomas. The white dress she'd sewn herself. The flowers in her hair. The love she'd felt so certain and pure as she spoke her vows. Love hadn't saved her from anything. It hadn't stopped Thomas from gambling their future away. It hadn't kept him alive when the mine collapsed. Maybe love was a luxury she couldn't afford anymore. Maybe survival was enough. At 11 o'clock the next morning, Clara walked into the livery stable. Eli was brushing down a bay mare, his back to the door. He turned when he heard her footsteps. "Mrs. Thornton." "I have conditions," she said without preamble. He set down the brush. "I'm listening." "You pay off all of Thomas's debts. Every cent. The bank, the general store, Miller's pharmacy, all of it. Done. You pay for my mother's medicine and doctor visits, as long as she needs them. Done. Samuel comes with us. He's my son. That doesn't change because I sign a marriage certificate. I wouldn't have it any other way." Clara swallowed. Here was the hard part. "And you don't touch me. Not until I say so. Not until I'm ready." Eli was quiet for a moment. Then he nodded slowly. "All right. You agree. Just like that." "You're not cattle to be claimed, Clara. You're a woman, a person. What happens between us happens when you choose it, not before." He met her eyes. "I need a partner, not a prize." Something shifted in Clara's chest, a crack in the wall she'd built since Thomas died. "Then I accept," she said. "I'll marry you." Eli didn't smile, didn't whoop or rush to embrace her. He just nodded, solemn as a man making a vow. "We can see the preacher this afternoon. Get the papers signed, make it official. Today. No reason to wait, unless you need more time." Clara thought of her mother's labored breathing, the bank's deadline, Samuel's too thin wrists. "No," she said. "No more waiting. Let's do it today." Yeah. The wedding took place in the small church at the edge of town. Reverend Holloway read the vows quickly, his spectacles slipping down his nose. There were no flowers, no music, no guests except Samuel, who stood beside his mother clutching her hand, and Henry Blackwood, an older man with sun-weathered skin, who Eli introduced as a friend. "Do you, Clara May Thornton, take this man to be your lawfully wedded husband?" Clara looked at Eli, a stranger, a horsebreaker, the man who was about to become her husband. "I do," she said. "And do you, Eli Cormack, take this woman to be your lawfully wedded wife?" "I do." "Then by the power vested in me by the Wyoming Territory, I pronounce you man and wife." Reverend Holloway closed his Bible. "You may kiss the bride." Eli turned to Clara. For a moment she thought he might actually try. Instead, he took her hand and pressed his lips briefly to her knuckles. "Mrs. Cormack," he said quietly. And just like that, it was done. They left town that same afternoon. Eli had brought a wagon, sturdy, well-made, with a canvas cover to shield against sun and rain. The bed was already loaded with supplies: flour, sugar, salt, bolts of fabric tools. Things Clara hadn't been able to afford in months. "All this is for us?" she asked. "For the homestead?" Eli helped Martha, pale and weak, but determined to travel onto a padded seat in the wagon bed. "We've got a long ride. 3 days, maybe 4, depending on the weather." Clara lifted Samuel onto the driver's bench, then climbed up herself. Eli took the reins. "Where exactly are we going?" she asked. "Up into the mountains. Got a place there." "A homestead, you said?" "That's right." She waited for more. He didn't offer it. Henry Blackwood mounted his horse and rode up alongside them. He tipped his hat to Clara. "Ma'am, good to meet you proper." "Mr. Blackwood?" "Henry's fine. I've worked with Eli for, well, a long time." Something flickered in his eyes. Amusement maybe, or some private joke she didn't understand. "He's a good man. You chose well." "I didn't exactly have many choices." Henry laughed a warm sound. "That's fair, but sometimes the best choices are the ones that find us, not the other way around." Eli clicked to the horses, and the wagon lurched forward. Clara turned to look back at Thornton Flat one last time. The house where she'd lived for 3 years. The grave where Thomas lay. The streets where people had watched her fall and never offered a hand. She was leaving it all behind to follow a man she'd known for 2 days into the mountains. Either this was the bravest thing she'd ever done, or the most foolish. Time would tell. The first day passed slowly. The road wound through open prairie, then began to climb into foothills dotted with sage and scrub pine. Samuel sat between Clara and Eli, peppering the man with questions. "Do you have horses at your place?" "A few." "Can I learn to ride?" "If your mama says it's all right." Samuel tugged Clara's sleeve. "Can I, Mama?" "Can I learn to ride?" "We'll see." "That means yes." The boy bounced on the seat. "Mr. Eli, do you have a dog?" "Nope, but we've got barn cats." "I like cats." "Grandma had a cat once, but it ran away. Or maybe a coyote got it. Mama wouldn't say." Clara shot Eli an apologetic look. "He talks a lot." "It's fine." The corner of Eli's mouth twitched. "Been too quiet on my own. Nice to have some noise." They made camp that evening in a grove of cottonwoods beside a clear stream. Eli built a fire while Clara settled Martha in the wagon bed with extra blankets. "How are you feeling, Mama?" "Like I've been bounced over every rock in Wyoming." Martha managed a weak smile. "But I'll live. That's more than I could say last week." Clara squeezed her hand. "Rest now. I'll bring you some supper." She climbed down from the wagon to find Eli frying salt pork and beans over the fire. The smell made her stomach growl. She couldn't remember the last time she'd had meat. "There's coffee in the pot," he said without looking up. "Cups are in that crate." She poured 2 cups and handed him one. Their fingers brushed. She pulled back quickly. They ate in silence. Samuel fell asleep against Clara's shoulder before he finished his plate. She carried him to the wagon and tucked him in beside Martha, then came back to the fire. Eli sat with his back against a log staring into the flames. "Tell me about your homestead," Clara said. "What do you want to know? How big is it? What do you raise? How far from the nearest town?" He was quiet for a moment. "It's good land. Plenty of water, timber, grass for grazing. Far enough from town that nobody bothers us." "That's not an answer." "It's the only one I've got right now." He met her eyes. "You'll see for yourself soon enough. I'm not good with words. Never have been." "Then what are you good with?" "Horses, hard work, keeping promises." Clara studied his face in the firelight. He looked tired, older than she'd first thought, maybe mid-30s, with lines around his eyes that spoke of too much sun and not enough rest. "Why me?" she asked. "You could have any woman in the territory. A man with land, a man who can pay off debts without blinking. You could have married someone better." "Better how? Richer, younger, prettier. Not a widow with a sick mother and a 5-year-old son." Eli stared into the fire for a long time. "I had a sweetheart once," he said finally. "Years ago. Her name was Margaret." "What happened?" "She found out some things about me, about my family, and she showed me what she really valued." His jaw tightened. "It wasn't me." Clara waited. "Since then, I've been looking for something different. Someone who didn't care about—" He stopped, shook his head. "Never mind. Point is, I saw you in town. Saw how you handled yourself when everything was falling apart. That's worth more than pretty dresses and good family names." "You don't know me, Eli. Not really." "No, but I'd like to." He looked at her, and something in his storm-gray eyes made her breath catch. "If you'll let me." Clara didn't answer. She couldn't. The walls around her heart were too high, the wounds too fresh. But somewhere deep down in a place she'd thought was dead and buried, something stirred. On the third day, the terrain changed. The road, what was left of it, wound through dense pine forest, climbing higher with every mile. The air grew cooler despite the summer season. Snow still capped the distant peaks. Samuel pressed against Eli's side, tired of bouncing on the hard seat. "Are we almost there?" "Almost." They came around a bend, and Eli pulled the horses to a stop. "Clara." She looked up from the mending in her lap. "What?" "Look." She looked. Below them, hidden in a natural bowl between mountain ridges, lay a valley. Green and gold in the summer light, with a river running through its heart like a silver ribbon. Even from here she could see cattle grazing, horses running in fenced pastures, buildings clustered near the water. But it was the house that stole her breath. Not a cabin, not a homestead. A mansion. 3 stories of timber and stone with wide porches wrapped around every level. Glass windows, dozens of them, glittered in the afternoon sun. Smoke rose from multiple chimneys. A long drive swept up to the front entrance lined with young aspens. Clara's mouth opened, closed, opened again. That's your place." "Yes." "You said you were a horsebreaker." "I am." "You said you had a homestead." "This is a homestead. It's just—" He paused. "A bigger one than most." Clara stared at the valley, at the mansion, at the man beside her who'd just paid off $800 of debt without hesitating. "Who are you?" she whispered. Eli turned to face her. His eyes were steady, but something vulnerable flickered behind them. Something almost like fear. "My name is Elijah Cormack," he said. "My father built the Cormack Cattle Company. When he died, he left it to me, all of it. The land, the cattle, the timber rights, the investments." He gestured toward the valley. "This is Cormack Ranch, and as of 3 days ago, it's your home too." Clara couldn't speak, couldn't breathe. She'd married a poor horsebreaker to save her family from ruin, and he'd just driven her to a kingdom. The wagon rolled down the winding road toward the mansion, and Clara's hands gripped the seat so hard her knuckles turned white. Samuel bounced beside her, pointing at everything. "Mama, look at all the horses, and the cows. Mama, that house is bigger than the whole church back home." Clara couldn't answer. Her throat had closed up. Eli kept his eyes on the road, his jaw tight. He hadn't said a word since his confession. The silence between them felt thick enough to cut. Finally she found her voice. "You lied to me." "I didn't lie. I just didn't tell you everything." "That's the same thing." Clara's voice shook with anger she hadn't known she was holding. "You let me think you were poor. You let me think I was marrying some drifter with a patch of dirt in the mountains." "Would you have said yes if you knew the truth?" "That's not the point." "It's exactly the point." Eli pulled the horses to a stop. They were halfway down the hill, the mansion looming below them. He turned to face her, and for the first time she saw real emotion crack through his stoic mask. "Every woman I've ever met who knew about the money, they didn't see me. They saw the ranch, the cattle, the bank accounts. They smiled and flattered and said all the right things, and none of it was real. So you tricked me instead. I gave you a choice without the noise. I wanted to know if you'd choose me, just me, when you thought I had nothing." Clara stared at him. Her anger warred with something else, something she couldn't name. "And what if I'd said no? What if I'd turned down your proposal because I thought you were too poor? Then I would have known you weren't the woman I thought you were." "That's not fair." "Maybe not." His voice dropped. "But it's honest. I've been burned before, Clara. Burned bad. I wasn't about to let it happen again." In the wagon bed, Martha coughed weakly. Samuel tugged Clara's sleeve. "Mama, are you and Mr. Eli fighting?" Clara took a breath. Then another. The anger was still there simmering beneath her ribs, but Samuel was watching with worried eyes, and her mother needed rest, and they were miles from anywhere, with nowhere else to go. "No, sweetheart. We're just talking." She turned back to Eli. "This conversation isn't over." "I know. But right now my mother needs a bed and my son needs food. So we're going to that house and you're going to explain everything. Every single thing you've been hiding. And then I'll decide what happens next." Eli nodded slowly. "Fair enough." He clicked to the horses and the wagon rolled on. The main house grew larger with every turn of the wheels. Clara counted windows 20-30 more than she could track. A wide porch wrapped around the entire first floor. Rocking chairs sat empty, waiting for someone to fill them. Flower boxes lined the railings bright with summer blooms. A man emerged from the front door as they approached. Tall, broad-shouldered, maybe 50 years old with silver threading through his dark hair. He wore clean work clothes and polished boots, and he moved with the easy confidence of someone who belonged here. "Mr. Cormack." He reached up to help with the horses. "Welcome home, sir." "Sir." Clara's stomach tightened. Eli jumped down from the wagon. "James, this is Mrs. Cormack, my wife." The man's eyebrows rose, but he recovered quickly. "Ma'am, welcome to Cormack Ranch." He tipped his hat. "I'm James Whitfield, the house manager. Anything you need, you come to me." House manager. Not just a hired hand. A manager. How big was this place? Clara climbed down without waiting for help. "Thank you, Mr. Whitfield. My mother is in the wagon. She's ill and needs a proper bed." "Of course. I'll have the guest room on the first floor prepared right away. Easier for her than climbing stairs." He turned and called toward the house. "Mary Sarah, we have guests." Two women in neat aprons hurried out. They took in Clara's worn dress and dusty shawl without a flicker of judgment, then moved to help Martha down from the wagon. "Careful with her," Clara said. "Her lungs are weak." "Don't you worry, ma'am." The older woman Mary Clara guessed spoke with a soft Irish lilt. "We'll take good care of her." They guided Martha toward the house. Samuel tried to follow, but Clara caught his hand. "Stay with me for now." The boy nodded, pressing close to her side. His eyes were huge as he stared at the mansion. "Mama," he whispered, "are we gonna live here?" "I don't know, sweetheart. I truly don't know." Eli appeared at her elbow. "Come inside. I'll show you around." Clara wanted to refuse, wanted to plant her feet and demand answers right here in the yard. But her legs ached from 3 days of travel, and Samuel was drooping with exhaustion, and the anger would still be there after she'd had a chance to sit down. She followed him inside. The front hall took her breath away. Polished wood floors stretched in every direction. A wide staircase curved up to the second floor. Paintings hung on the walls. Landscapes, horses, a portrait of a stern-faced man who looked like an older version of Eli. "My father," Eli said, following her gaze. "Patrick Cormack. He built all this from nothing. And now it's yours. Now it's ours." Clara didn't respond to that. They moved through the house. A parlor with velvet chairs and a marble fireplace. A dining room with a table that could seat 20. A library, a real library, with floor-to-ceiling shelves packed with books. Clara's heart lurched at the sight. She hadn't held a proper book in years. Samuel pointed at everything, chattering questions faster than anyone could answer. Eli responded patiently, showing the boy a collection of carved wooden horses on a shelf, letting him peek into the kitchen where a cook was already preparing supper. "This is too much," Clara finally said. They stood in a sitting room at the back of the house with tall windows overlooking the valley. "Eli, I can't." "Can't what?" "I can't be the mistress of a place like this. I'm a widow from a mining town. I mend clothes and make soup from potato peelings. I don't know how to run a mansion." "You don't have to run it. That's what James and Mary and the rest of the staff are for." Eli moved closer. All I'm asking is for you to live here. Make it a home. Let Samuel grow up with room to run and horses to ride. Let your mother rest somewhere comfortable. And what do you want in return? I told you before, a partner. Partners don't keep secrets. No. He looked down. They don't. And I'm sorry for that. I should have told you the truth before we got married. I was just... He stopped, struggling for words. Scared. His jaw tightened. Yeah, scared. Clara studied his face, the strong lines of his jaw, the shadows under his eyes, the vulnerability he was trying so hard to hide. Tell me about Margaret. Eli flinched like she'd struck him. What? The woman you mentioned, the one who showed you what she really valued. Tell me what happened. For a long moment he didn't answer. Then he crossed to the window and stared out at the valley. We were engaged, 3 years ago. I thought she loved me, thought we'd build a life together. His voice was flat, controlled. Then my father died, and suddenly I wasn't just a rancher's son. I was the owner, the heir. And Margaret, she changed. Started talking about expanding the ranch, buying out the neighbors, making deals with the railroad companies. She had plans, big plans. None of them included asking what I wanted. What did you want? To run the ranch the way my father did. Fair wages, good treatment for the workers, sustainable grazing. Not strip the land bare and squeeze every penny out of it. He turned to face her. When I said no to her plans, she went behind my back, tried to forge my signature on contracts. When I found out, she laughed, said I was naive, that I'd never survive in business, that she was just trying to help me. What did you do? Ended the engagement. Threw her out. His hands clenched at his sides. She married my business partner 2 months later. They've been trying to buy up land around me ever since, cutting off my water rights, spreading rumors about my operation. I think she wants to own this valley out of spite. Clara absorbed this. The pain in his voice was real. She could hear it, raw and old and still bleeding. So, when you came to Thornton Flat looking for a wife, I wanted someone who didn't know. Someone who'd see me as just a man, not a prize to be won. He met her eyes. I know I went about it wrong. I know I should have trusted you with the truth, but after Margaret, I didn't know how to trust anyone. Clara thought about Thomas. The promises he'd made, the dreams he'd spun, the debt he'd left behind. She understood something about broken trust. I need time, she said finally. To think. To adjust. It's a lot to take in. Take all the time you need. There's no rush. And I want my own room, separate from yours. Something flickered in his eyes. Disappointment maybe, but he nodded. I'll have Mary prepare the blue room for you. It's got a good view of the mountains. Thank you. She turned to leave, then stopped at the door. Eli. Yeah. I'm still angry, but I think I understand why you did it. That doesn't make it right. But I understand. He let out a breath. That's more than I expected. Clara left without another word. The blue room was beautiful. Pale walls, white curtains, a 4-poster bed with a quilt soft as clouds, a washstand with a real porcelain basin, a wardrobe big enough to hold 100 dresses, though Clara only had 2. She sat on the edge of the bed and let herself shake. Everything had changed in the span of an hour. She'd gone from desperate widow to mistress of a cattle empire, from married to a poor horsebreaker to married to one of the richest men in Wyoming. And she had no idea what to do with any of it. A knock at the door made her jump. Come in. Mary, the Irish housekeeper, entered with a tray. Thought you might like some tea, ma'am, and a bit of bread and cheese. Supper won't be for another hour. Thank you. Clara accepted the tray. Mary, how long have you worked here? Going on 15 years, ma'am. Started when Mr. Patrick was still alive, God rest him. She paused. Mr. Eli's a good man. Quiet, keeps to himself too much, but good. His father was proud of him. Did you know about how he found me?" Mary's eyes softened. "I knew he'd been riding out to the small towns looking for something. Didn't know what, until James got the telegram yesterday saying he was coming home with a wife." She smiled gently. "Whatever brought you here, ma'am, you're welcome. This house has been too empty for too long." After Mary left, Clara ate slowly, thinking. Eli had lied to her, manipulated her in a way. But he'd also saved her mother's life, given Samuel a future, pulled her out of a hole so deep she'd never have climbed out alone. Was that enough? She didn't know yet. But she was here, and her family was safe, and for now, that would have to be enough. The next few days passed in a blur of adjustment. Clara explored the house, learning its rhythms. The cook, Mrs. Patterson, no relation to the woman back in Thornton Flat, ruled the kitchen with an iron hand and a warm heart. James ran the household staff with quiet efficiency. Mary seemed to be everywhere at once, anticipating needs before Clara even knew she had them. Martha improved daily. The mountain air, the good food, the proper medicine, all of it combined to bring color back to her cheeks. She still tired easily, but the wet, rattling cough began to fade. "This place is a miracle," she told Clara one afternoon. They sat on the back porch, watching Samuel chase butterflies across the lawn. "I feel better than I have in years." "The doctor says you'll need to rest for at least another month." "The doctor can say what he likes. I feel like a new woman." Clara smiled, but her mind was elsewhere. She and Eli had settled into an uneasy truce. They ate meals together, made polite conversation about the ranch and the weather and Samuel's latest adventures. But the deeper things, the questions about their future, about what their marriage would become, those remained unspoken. At night, she lay in her beautiful blue room and stared at the ceiling, wondering. On the 5th day, everything changed again. Clara was in the library running her fingers along the book spines when she heard a commotion from the front of the house. Raised voices, the sound of boots on the polished floor. She hurried to the hall. A woman stood in the foyer, tall, elegant, dressed in a traveling suit of deep green that probably cost more than Clara's entire wardrobe. Her hair was golden blonde, swept up in an elaborate style. Her face was beautiful and cold as a winter morning. "Elijah," the woman's voice carried easily. "I heard the most extraordinary rumor. I had to come see for myself." Eli stood rigid near the staircase. His face had gone blank in a way Clara was beginning to recognize his armor against the world. "Victoria, what are you doing here?" "Is it true?" The woman Victoria moved closer, her skirts rustling. "Did you actually marry some nobody from a mining town? My wife is none of your concern." "Oh, but she is. She very much is." Victoria smiled, and it was not a kind expression. "You see, Elijah, I have Frederick's interests to think about. And a sudden marriage to a complete stranger raises certain questions." Clara stepped forward before she could think better of it. "I'm Clara Cormack, and you are." Victoria turned. Her eyes swept over Clara from head to toe, taking in the simple dress, the work-roughened hands, the hair that had never seen a professional stylist. "Ah, the bride." Her lip curled slightly. "I'm Victoria Ashford Cormack, Elijah's sister-in-law. His brother Edward was my husband." Edward died 5 years ago. A riding accident." Victoria's tone suggested she was discussing the weather. "Which makes my son Frederick Elijah's only living relative, and his potential heir." Clara felt the temperature in the room drop. "I see. Do you—" Victoria moved closer. "Let me be plain, Mrs. Cormack, if I may even call you that. This marriage is irregular, to say the least. A wealthy man like Elijah marrying a penniless widow with a child. No courtship, no engagement, no proper introduction to society." She laughed lightly. "People will talk. They're already talking." "Let them talk." "Oh, you say that now, but you don't understand how things work here. The Cormack name carries weight in this territory. Responsibilities, expectations." Victoria glanced at Eli, then back at Clara. I'm here to protect that name, and if your presence threatens it, I will do whatever is necessary to remove you. Victoria, Eli's voice cracked like a whip. That's enough. Is it I'm simply being honest with your wife? Victoria gathered her skirts. I'll be staying in town for the next few weeks. Business matters to attend to. I'm sure we'll be seeing quite a bit of each other. She swept out the door, leaving silence in her wake. Clara turned to Eli. Who is she really? What does she want? Eli ran a hand through his hair. He looked tired, older than his years. Victoria married my brother for his money. When Edward died, she thought she'd have control of the ranch through Frederick. But my father's will was clear. Everything passes to me, then to my children. If I die without heirs, Frederick inherits. If I have children of my own, they inherit instead. Yes. Clara's mind raced. So by marrying me, I've threatened everything she's been planning for. Eli met her eyes. I should have warned you. I knew she'd come eventually. I just hoped we'd have more time. Time for what? For you to settle in. For us to figure things out. He stepped closer. Clara Victoria is dangerous. She has connections in Denver and Cheyenne, in all the places that matter. If she decides to come after you after us, she has the resources to make our lives very difficult. Then we'll just have to be ready for her. Eli blinked. You're not running. Should I be? Most women would. Clara thought about the poverty she'd escaped, the bank's letter, the empty medicine bottles, the desperation that had driven her to marry a stranger. She hadn't come this far to be chased away by a woman in expensive clothes. I'm not most women, she said, and I don't run from fights. Something shifted in Eli's expression. The wariness, the distance they cracked just a little. No, he said quietly. I don't suppose you do. That night, Clara couldn't sleep. She paced her beautiful room, her mind churning. Victoria's threats, Eli's secrets, the life she'd stumbled into, so much bigger and more complicated than she'd ever imagined. Around midnight, she heard footsteps in the hall, soft, uncertain. She opened her door. Samuel stood there in his nightshirt, his face pale. Mama, I had a bad dream. Oh, sweetheart. She knelt and pulled him into her arms. It's all right. You're safe here. I dreamed the bad lady took you away. The one who came today. She had mean eyes. Clara held him tighter. Nobody's taking me anywhere. I promise. Do you like it here, Mama, with Mr. Eli? The question caught her off guard. I'm still figuring that out. I like it. Samuel pulled back to look at her. Mr. Eli taught me to brush the horses today. And Mrs. Patterson let me lick the spoon when she made pie. And Grandma laughed at supper. She hasn't laughed in forever. Clara's heart ached. You're right, she said softly. Grandma did laugh. So maybe we should stay, even if it's scary sometimes. Out of the mouths of babes. Maybe we should, Clara agreed. Maybe we should. She tucked Samuel into her bed, curling around him protectively. As he drifted off, she stared into the darkness and made a decision. Victoria Ashford Cormack wanted a fight. Clara would give her one. The next morning, Clara found Eli in the stables. He was brushing down a big bay gelding, his movements sure and rhythmic. He looked more at ease here than anywhere else, more himself. I want to learn, she said without preamble. He paused. Learn what? Everything. The ranch, the business, how things work. She stepped closer. If Victoria's going to come after us, I need to understand what we're protecting. I can't fight blind. Eli set down the brush. Most wives don't get involved in ranch business. I'm not most wives. The words echoed what she'd said the day before, and she saw him recognize it. You said you wanted a partner. So let me be one. A real one. For a long moment he studied her face. Then slowly a smile tugged at the corner of his mouth. All right, Mrs. Cormack, let's start with the books. He wasn't exaggerating about the size of the operation. Cormack Cattle Company owned 30,000 acres of land grazing range timber water rights. They ran 5,000 head of cattle and 300 horses. They employed over 60 workers from ranch hands to house staff to seasonal crews who helped with branding and drives. Clara's head spun with numbers, but she forced herself to focus. This ledger here, Eli explained, pointing to a column. That's the quarterly expenses. Feed wages, equipment, veterinary costs. And this one is revenue, cattle sales, horse sales, timber contracts. You're profitable. Very. My father built something solid. I've tried to maintain it. And Victoria? What's her stake? Eli's expression darkened. When Edward died, she inherited his personal assets, a house in Denver, some investments, a small annual stipend from the company. But the ranch itself, the business that stayed in the family trust, under my control. So she has money, but not power. Exactly. And that's what she can't stand. Clara flipped through the ledger, her teacher's mind absorbing the patterns. What about this entry, legal fees DTC Holdings? That's a lot of money. Eli went still. That's Victoria's company. She's been filing lawsuits, challenging water rights, grazing boundaries, anything she can think of, trying to bleed us dry with legal costs. For how long? 3 years now. Clara looked up at him. Why didn't you tell me this before? Because I'm used to fighting alone. His voice was rough. Because I didn't want to scare you off before you even had a chance to settle in. Eli. She closed the ledger. I grew up poor. I married a man who gambled away everything we had. I've faced down creditors and hunger and watching my mother almost die. Victoria Ashford Cormack and her lawsuits don't scare me. Something flickered in his eyes. Something warm. I'm beginning to see that. Over the following days, Clara threw herself into learning. She rode out with Eli to inspect the range, met the foreman who managed different sections of the property, asked questions until her voice went hoarse. The workers watched her with curiosity at first, then growing respect. She wasn't afraid to get dirty, wasn't afraid to admit what she didn't know. And when she made suggestions, small things, practical things, like improving the ventilation in the bunkhouses or adding a second well near the south pasture, they listened. She's something else, Clara overheard one of the hands say to another. Boss did good. She tucked that away, a small warm ember in her chest. But Victoria hadn't forgotten them. 2 weeks after her first visit, she returned. This time, she brought company. 3 men in expensive suits with the sharp eyes of lawyers or bankers. Elijah! Victoria swept into the parlor without waiting to be announced. We need to talk about the future of Cormack Cattle Company. Clara rose from her chair by the window, where she'd been reviewing supply orders. Mrs. Ashford Cormack, what a surprise. Victoria's gaze flickered over her. Still here, I see. This is my home. Where else would I be? Where indeed? Victoria turned to Eli, who had entered from the hall. Elijah, these gentlemen represent the Denver Cheyenne Railroad Consortium. They have a proposal I think you should hear. One of the suited men stepped forward. Mr. Cormack, the consortium is prepared to offer a substantial sum for right-of-way across your southern range. The railroad expansion? No. The man blinked. I'm sorry. The answer is no. I've told Victoria before, and I'll tell you now. I'm not selling right-of-way. I'm not partnering with the railroad, and I'm not interested in whatever scheme she's cooked up to get her hands on my land. Victoria's smile thinned. You're being short-sighted, Elijah. This deal could double the value of your holdings. Or it could destroy them. I've seen what happens when the railroad comes through. They tear up the land, drive out the small ranchers, turn everything into a company town. Eli's voice hardened. That's not happening here. Not while I'm alive. Well, Victoria's eyes glittered. Let's hope it doesn't come to that. She swept out with her suited companions, leaving threat hanging in the air like smoke. Clara moved to Eli's side. What did she mean by that? I don't know. His jaw was tight. But I don't like it. Neither did Clara. That night she found herself in the library again, searching for something she couldn't quite name. Her fingers trailed along the book spines until they stopped on a leather-bound volume. Property Law of the Wyoming Territory. She pulled it down and began to read. If Victoria wanted to play games with lawyers and contracts, Clara would learn the rules. Every single one. She stayed up until dawn, taking notes by candlelight, and when Mary found her slumped over the desk the next morning, she was already 3 chapters deep into inheritance law. Ma'am? Mary touched her shoulder gently. You should rest. Later. Clara rubbed her eyes. I need to understand something first. Understand what? Clara looked up at the housekeeper, a new determination hardening her gaze. How to beat Victoria at her own game. 3 weeks of reading law books taught Clara more than she ever wanted to know about property rights inheritance claims and the dozens of ways a determined enemy could tie up an estate in court for years. But it was a single line in a faded document that changed everything. She found it buried in Eli's father's files tucked between cattle contracts and land surveys. A letter from a Denver attorney dated 6 years ago. Eli. She burst into his study without knocking. I need you to look at this. He set down his pen, startled by her urgency. What is it? This letter, from your father's lawyer. She spread it on his desk, pointing to a paragraph near the bottom. Read it. Eli's eyes moved across the page. His face went pale. This can't be right. It's your father's handwriting in the margin. He confirmed it. The letter described a codicil to Patrick Cormac's will, a provision that Victoria clearly didn't know about or hoped no one would find. If Eli married and remained married for 1 full year, the trust provisions changed. Victoria's annual stipend would be reduced by half. More importantly, her son Frederick would be permanently removed from the line of succession, regardless of whether Eli had children of his own. 1 year, Clara said. That's why she's pushing so hard. That's why she brought those railroad men. She's not just trying to pressure you, she's running out of time. Eli stared at the document. My father never told me about this. Maybe he thought you'd marry on your own. Maybe he was waiting for the right moment. Clara leaned against the desk. The point is, Victoria knows. She has to know. Why else would she be escalating now, right after we got married? Someone told her. Eli's voice hardened. Someone in this house. Or someone with access to your father's papers. Clara thought for a moment. The lawyer? Where is he now? Retired. Moved to San Francisco 3 years ago. Eli stood abruptly pacing. But his firm still exists. They have copies of everything. Victoria has connections in Denver. You said so yourself. So she bribed someone at the firm. Got a look at the will. Eli slammed his fist against the wall. Damn it, I should have seen this coming. Clara watched him pace, her mind racing. How long until our anniversary? 9 months. Almost 10. Then we have 9 months to make sure she can't touch us. You don't understand. Eli turned to face her, and the fear in his eyes made her stomach drop. Victoria doesn't wait. She doesn't play fair. If she knows about the codicil, she'll do whatever it takes to end this marriage before the year is up. End it how? Annulment, scandal, anything that would make a judge declare our marriage invalid. He moved closer, his voice dropping. Clara, she'll come after you. Your past, your family, anything she can twist into a weapon. Clara thought about her life before. The poverty, the debt, Thomas's failures. There was plenty Victoria could use if she dug deep enough. Let her try, she said quietly. I'm not afraid of the truth. It's not the truth I'm worried about. It's the lies. Before Clara could respond, the study door flew open. Samuel stood in the doorway, his face streaked with tears. "Mama, come quick, Grandma fell down." Clara's heart stopped. She ran. Martha lay at the bottom of the main staircase, crumpled like a broken doll. Her face was gray, her breathing shallow and ragged. "Mama." Clara dropped to her knees beside her. "Mama, can you hear me?" Martha's eyes fluttered open. "Clara, my chest." "Don't try to talk. Just breathe." "Eli." He was already moving. "James. Get the doctor. Now." The next hours blurred together in a haze of fear and desperate prayers. The doctor came, a gray-haired man named Harrison, who'd been tending the Cormack family for 20 years. He examined Martha while Clara clutched her mother's hand and tried not to fall apart. "Her heart," Dr. Harrison said finally. "It's weak. The fall didn't help, but the underlying condition." He shook his head. "She needs complete rest. No stress, no exertion. And even then what?" The doctor met her eyes with weary compassion. "I won't lie to you, Mrs. Cormack. She might have months, she might have years, or she might not wake up tomorrow. There's no way to know." Clara felt the floor tilt beneath her feet. Eli's hand closed around her elbow, steadying her. "Whatever she needs," he told the doctor. "Medicine equipment specialists from Denver, anything. Money is no object." "I'll do everything I can." Dr. Harrison packed his bag. "For now, keep her comfortable and pray." After he left, Clara sat beside her mother's bed and wept. She hadn't cried like this since Thomas died, hadn't let herself feel this raw, this exposed. But watching her mother's chest rise and fall with each labored breath, she couldn't hold it back anymore. Eli found her there an hour later. He didn't say anything, just sat down in the chair beside her and took her hand. They stayed like that until dawn. Martha woke 3 days later. Her voice was thin as paper, but her eyes were clear. "Clara?" "I'm here, Mama." Clara leaned close, tears sliding down her cheeks. "I'm right here." "Stop crying. I'm not dead yet." A watery laugh escaped Clara's throat. "You scared me half to death." "Good. Keeps you on your toes." Martha's gaze drifted to the window, then back to her daughter's face. "How long was I out? 3 days? Feels like 3 years." She tried to shift, winced, and settled back against the pillows. "The doctor. What did he say?" Clara hesitated. "Don't you dare lie to me, Clara May. I've been dying since before you were born. I know what it looks like." He said to rest. No stress. He said I could go any time." Martha smiled faintly. "I can read between the lines, daughter. Always could." Clara's composure cracked. "Mama, please." "Hush now." Martha reached out and cupped Clara's cheek with a trembling hand. "I've made my peace with God. But before I go, I need to know you're going to be all right." "I will be. I am." "Are you—" Martha's eyes sharpened. "This man you married, this Eli, do you love him?" The question hit Clara like a physical blow. I don't know." "That's an honest answer at least." Martha lowered her hand. "But Clara, listen to me. I've watched you these past weeks. Watched how you look at him when you think no one's paying attention. Watched how he looks at you. Mama, there's something there. Something real. Don't be too proud to reach for it." Clara thought about the nights she'd spent studying law books, fighting for a marriage she'd entered out of desperation. Thought about the way Eli's hand felt in hers, steady and warm. The way he looked at her when he thought she wasn't watching. "It's complicated," she said finally. "Love always is." Martha's eyes drifted closed. "But it's worth it. Trust me on that." She was asleep before Clara could respond. A week later, the first blow landed. Clara was in the kitchen helping Mrs. Patterson preserve summer berries when James appeared in the doorway. "Ma'am, there's a man here to see you. From the Thornton Flat Bank. Clara's hands stilled. What? He says it's urgent. About your late husband's estate. She wiped her hands on her apron and followed James to the front parlor, her heart pounding. The man waiting there was small and precise, with wire-rimmed spectacles and a leather satchel. He introduced himself as Mr. Big Aldrich, representative of the First National Bank of Cheyenne. Mrs. Cormack, thank you for seeing me. What's this about my husband's debts were paid? Mr. Cormack handled everything. Indeed he did. Aldrich opened his satchel and withdrew a sheaf of papers. However, new information has come to light regarding your late husband's business dealings. Information that requires clarification. Clara's blood ran cold. What kind of information? It seems Mr. Thomas Thornton was involved in certain transactions that have recently come under scrutiny. Aldrich's eyes were flat, unreadable. Mining claims that were sold under questionable circumstances. Investments that may have involved fraud. That's impossible. Thomas was many things, but he wasn't a criminal. Perhaps not intentionally, but the documents suggest otherwise. Aldrich spread the papers on the table. If these allegations are proven, the bank may be required to pursue legal action against his estate, and by extension, against you. Clara stared at the documents. Names, dates, figures. Some of it she recognized Thomas's handwriting, his signature. But the transactions described were nothing she'd ever heard of. This is a mistake, she said. Or a forgery. That remains to be determined. Aldrich gathered the papers. I wanted to inform you in person as a courtesy. The bank will be conducting a full investigation. In the meantime, I suggest you consult an attorney. He left, and Clara stood alone in the parlor, her mind reeling. Victoria. This had Victoria written all over it. She found Eli in the stables and told him everything. His face darkened with each word. Let me see those documents. He didn't leave copies. Of course he didn't. Eli kicked a bucket, sending it clattering across the floor. She's manufacturing evidence, creating a scandal to invalidate our marriage. Can she do that legally? If she convinces a judge that you married me under false pretenses, that you were already under investigation for fraud, she could argue the marriage should be annulled. He ran his hands through his hair. It's thin, really thin. But with the right connections, she has the right connections. Yeah, she does. Clara felt the walls closing in. Everything she'd fought for, everything she'd built these past weeks, it could all disappear because of lies told about a dead man. What do we do? Eli was quiet for a long moment. Then he straightened his shoulders and met her eyes. We fight. We get our own lawyers, our own investigators. We find the truth about Thomas and whatever Victoria's trying to pin on him. And if the truth isn't what we want to hear, then we deal with it. Together. He stepped closer and took her hands. Clara, I told you when we got married that I needed a partner, someone who'd stand beside me when things got hard. I meant it. Whatever comes, we face it side by side. Clara looked at their joined hands, his rough and calloused, hers work-worn but steady. All right, she said. Together. Eli sent telegrams to Denver that same afternoon, summoning lawyers and investigators. Within a week, a small army of men in suits had descended on the ranch, poring over documents and asking questions. Clara answered everything they asked. Every detail about Thomas, their marriage, his mining ventures. It was exhausting and humiliating, laying bare the failures of her past for strangers to examine. But she did it. Because the alternative was letting Victoria win. Meanwhile, life on the ranch continued. Samuel, blissfully unaware of the adult struggles swirling around him, had blossomed. He followed Eli everywhere, peppering him with questions, learning to rope and ride and care for the horses. The haunted look that had lived in his eyes since Thomas's death began to fade. He adores you, Clara told Eli one evening. They sat on the front porch watching Samuel chase fireflies across the lawn. He's a good kid, easy to adore back. You're good with him. Better than his father ever was. Eli was quiet for a moment. Thomas wasn't good with him. Thomas loved him, in his way, but he was always chasing the next big dream, always somewhere else in his head. Clara watched her son laugh as he caught a firefly in his cupped hands. Samuel needed someone steady, someone present. Thomas couldn't give him that. And I can. Clara turned to look at him. His profile was sharp against the fading light, strong and serious. You already are. Something shifted between them. A wall coming down. A door opening. Eli reached over and took her hand. This time, she didn't pull away. The investigators found their first break 2 weeks later. The documents are forged, the lead attorney, a sharp-eyed man named Collins, announced. Good forgeries, but forgeries nonetheless. The ink analysis doesn't match. The paper stock wasn't available until after your husband's death. Clara sagged with relief. So it's over. Not quite. Collins spread out a second set of papers. We traced the forgeries back to their source, a man named Harold Pemberton. He works for a legal firm in Denver. Let me guess, Eli said darkly. A firm with ties to Victoria Ashford Cormack. The same firm that handled her husband's estate. Collins nodded. Mrs. Ashford Cormack was careful. She used intermediaries, shell companies, layers of deniability. But we have enough to take to a judge. What happens then? She'll face charges of fraud and conspiracy. At minimum, it will destroy her credibility. Any future claims she makes against your marriage will be viewed with extreme skepticism. Clara felt hope bloom in her chest for the first time in weeks, but Eli's expression remained troubled. Victoria won't go down without a fight. When she realizes we have evidence against her, she'll escalate. Escalate how? Clara asked. I don't know. That's what worries me. 3 days later, they found out. Clara woke to screaming. She bolted from her bed, heart pounding, and ran toward the sound. It was coming from Samuel's room. She burst through the door to find her son sitting up in bed, shrieking, pointing at the window. A man! Mama, there was a man at the window! Clara gathered him into her arms, her eyes scanning the darkness beyond the glass. Nothing. Just the night and the mountains and the stars. It's all right, sweetheart. It was just a dream. It wasn't. He was right there. He was watching me. Eli appeared in the doorway, rifle in hand. What happened? Samuel says he saw someone at the window. Eli's jaw tightened. He crossed to the window and peered out, then turned and strode from the room. Stay here. Lock the door. Clara heard him shouting orders, heard boots pounding across the yard, heard the dogs barking. She held Samuel close and didn't sleep for the rest of the night. At dawn, one of the ranch hands found boot prints beneath Samuel's window. Someone was here, Eli said grimly, watching the house. Clara felt ice spread through her veins. Victoria, one of her people, sending a message, his hands clenched into fists. She knows we have evidence against her. This is her response, letting us know she can reach us, reach Samuel. She wouldn't hurt a child, wouldn't she? Eli's eyes were hard. Victoria cares about one thing: power, and she's losing it. Desperate people do desperate things. Clara looked toward the house where Samuel was eating breakfast with Martha, unaware of the danger circling closer. What do? We go on the offensive. Eli turned to face her. The Cattlemen's Association ball is next month in Cheyenne. Everyone who matters in Wyoming will be there. Victoria will be there. And we're going to walk into that room, present our evidence, and destroy her in front of everyone she's spent years trying to impress. Clara's stomach churned. The thought of facing Denver society, facing Victoria on her own turf, it terrified her. But the thought of living in fear of watching her son's window every night, of waiting for Victoria's next attack, that was worse. All right, she said. Tell me what I need to do. The next 3 weeks were a whirlwind of preparation. Dressmakers came from Denver with fabrics and patterns. Clara stood for hours of fittings, trying not to fidget as they pinned and tucked and draped her in silk. "You're going to be beautiful," Mary assured her. "More beautiful than any of those society ladies." "I don't need to be beautiful. I need to be convincing." Same thing sometimes. Eli coached her on the families she'd meet, the alliances and rivalries that shaped Wyoming politics. Clara memorized names and faces until they blurred together. But through it all, one thought kept returning. The night before they left for Cheyenne, she found Eli in his study staring at the portrait of his father. "Eli," he turned. "You should be sleeping. Big day tomorrow." "I know. I just—" She crossed to stand beside him, looking up at Patrick Cormac's stern face. "I wanted to thank you." "For what?" "For believing in me. For standing by me through all of this." She took a breath. "And for being honest finally. About who you are. About what you want." Eli was quiet for a long moment. "Clara, there's something I need to tell you." Her heart stuttered. "What?" He turned to face her fully, and in the lamplight she saw something she'd never seen in his eyes before. Vulnerability. Raw and unguarded. "I didn't marry you just because I needed a partner. I didn't choose you just because you were strong or brave or didn't know about my money." He stepped closer. "I chose you because from the moment I saw you kneeling in the dust outside that pharmacy, holding that empty bottle like a prayer, I knew." "Knew what?" "That you were the one I'd been looking for my whole life." His voice dropped to barely a whisper. "I'm falling in love with you, Clara. I think I have been since the beginning." The words hung between them, fragile and enormous. Clara's throat tightened. Her eyes burned. "Eli." "You don't have to say anything back. I know it's too soon. I know I lied to you, and you're still angry, and you have every right to be." He reached up and touched her cheek so gently it made her heart ache. "But I needed you to know. Before we walk into that ballroom tomorrow, before we face Victoria and whoever she's bought, I needed you to know that this isn't just business to me anymore. It's not just survival." "Then what is it?" He smiled, and it was the most beautiful thing she'd ever seen. "It's everything." Clara didn't know who moved first. Maybe they both did. But suddenly she was in his arms, and his lips were on hers, and the world fell away. When they finally broke apart breathless, she looked up into his storm-gray eyes and spoke the truth she'd been afraid to admit. "I'm falling too," she whispered. "God help me, I'm falling too." The carriage rolled through Cheyenne's busy streets, and Clara pressed her hand against her stomach, trying to calm the butterflies that wouldn't stop. "You're going to wear a hole through your glove," Eli said. "I'm fine." "You're terrified." "I said I'm fine." He reached over and took her hand, stilling its nervous movement. "Clara, look at me." She turned. His eyes were steady calm, anchoring her. "Whatever happens in there tonight, we face it together. Remember?" "I remember." "Good. Now take a breath." She did. Then another. The carriage slowed. Through the window, Clara could see the Cheyenne Club blazing with light. Carriages lined the street. Men in dark suits and women in silk gowns streamed toward the entrance. "This is it," she whispered. "This is it." The footman opened the door. Eli stepped out first, then turned and offered his hand. Clara took it. Her gown was deep blue, the color of twilight. Simple lines, nothing too ornate. Mary had insisted on pearls at her throat and woven through her hair. She'd argued, said it was too much, but now she was grateful. The pearls felt like armor. They walked toward the entrance. Clara kept her chin high, her shoulders back. She could feel eyes on her from every direction. A man at the door announced their names. Mr. Elijah Cormac and Mrs. Clara Cormac. The ballroom fell silent. Then the whispers started. Clara heard fragments as they moved through the crowd. "That's her." "The widow from the mining town." Can you believe he actually married her? I heard she trapped him. She kept walking. Eli's hand pressed warm against the small of her back. Steady, reassuring. Ignore them, he murmured. I'm trying. A woman stepped into their path, tall regal dressed in emerald green. Her smile was polished and cold. Elijah, how wonderful to see you. Her eyes slid to Clara. And this must be your wife. Mrs. Harrington. Eli's voice was carefully neutral. May I present Clara Cormack? Charmed, I'm sure. Mrs. Harrington's tone suggested she was anything but. I must say you've caused quite a stir, my dear. No one knew Elijah was even courting anyone. It was a private matter, Clara said evenly. Clearly. Mrs. Harrington's smile sharpened. Well, I do hope you're prepared for tonight. Victoria has been telling everyone about some fascinating documents she's uncovered. Something about your late husband, I believe. Clara's heart stuttered, but she kept her expression smooth. I'm sure whatever Victoria has to say will be very entertaining. Won't it just... Mrs. Harrington drifted away, her laugh trailing behind her. Eli leaned close. She's fishing. Don't let her rattle you. I'm not rattled. Liar. Despite everything, Clara felt her lips twitch. They moved deeper into the ballroom. More introductions, more veiled insults, more curious stares. Clara smiled until her face ached and answered questions until her throat went dry. Then she saw Victoria. The woman stood near the far wall surrounded by admirers. Her gown was blood-red dramatic against her pale skin. Her eyes found Clara across the room, and she smiled. It was the smile of a cat who'd cornered a mouse. She's coming over, Eli said. I know. Victoria glided through the crowd like a shark through water. The people around her parted, sensing drama. Elijah, Clara. She stopped before them, her smile never wavering. I'm so glad you could make it. Victoria, Eli's voice was ice. I wasn't aware you'd be here. Where else would I be? This is the event of the season. Her eyes fixed on Clara. I must say, Mrs. Cormack, you clean up surprisingly well. One would almost think you belonged here. Almost. Clara kept her voice light. I'll take that as a compliment. Take it however you like. Victoria's smile thinned. I hear you've been busy these past weeks. Lawyers, investigators, all sorts of people coming and going from the ranch. Routine business matters. Is that what you call it? Victoria stepped closer, lowering her voice. I know what you found, Clara. I know about the codicil, and I want you to understand something. What's that? A piece of paper doesn't change reality. You don't belong in Elijah's world. You never will. Victoria's eyes glittered. And when this night is over, everyone here will know it. She swept away before Clara could respond. Eli's hand found hers, squeezing tight. What's she planning? Clara whispered. I don't know, but we need to be ready. The next hour passed in tense anticipation. Clara danced with Eli, smiled at strangers, made small talk about weather and cattle prices. All the while, her eyes kept finding Victoria across the room. The woman was working the crowd systematically, speaking to one person after another. Each conversation was brief but intense, and after each one, the person would glance at Clara with new suspicion. She's poisoning them against me, Clara murmured during a break between dances. Let her talk. We have the truth on our side. Truth doesn't always win against money and connections. Tonight it will. A bell chimed, calling attention to the front of the room. An older man stepped onto a small platform. Governor Warren Clara recognized him from the newspapers. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us this evening. Before we continue with the festivities, I understand we have some business to attend to. Clara's stomach dropped. Victoria moved to stand beside the governor, her smile triumphant. Thank you, Governor. Her voice carried easily through the suddenly silent room. I apologize for interrupting the evening, but there's a matter of some importance that I believe deserves public attention. The crowd murmured, hungry for scandal. As many of you know, my brother-in-law Elijah recently married, quite suddenly, to a woman none of us had ever heard of. More murmurs. Eyes turned toward Clara. I don't begrudge Elijah his happiness, of course. But as someone who cares deeply about the Cormac legacy, a legacy built by my late husband and his father, I felt it my duty to investigate this unusual union. Clara's hands trembled. Eli moved closer, his shoulder pressing against hers. What I found was deeply troubling. Victoria produced a sheaf of papers from somewhere, documents proving that Mrs. Cormac's late husband was involved in criminal fraud, mining schemes that bilked innocent investors out of thousands of dollars. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Furthermore, I have reason to believe that Mrs. Cormac herself was complicit in these crimes. That she married Elijah not out of affection, but to escape prosecution and secure her family's financial future. That's a lie. The words burst from Clara before she could stop them. Every eye in the room fixed on her. Victoria's smile widened. Is it? Then perhaps you can explain these documents, Mrs. Cormac. Your husband's signature, his business records, his correspondence with known criminals. Those documents are forged. Clara stepped forward, her voice shaking but clear. And you know they're forged because you're the one who paid to have them created. The crowd erupted. Victoria's face flickered surprise, quickly masked. That's a serious accusation, Mrs. Cormac. Do you have proof? As a matter of fact, I do. Clara turned to Eli, who was already reaching into his jacket. He withdrew an envelope and handed it to her. These are sworn statements from Harold Pemberton, the man you hired to forge those documents. Clara held up the papers. He's confessed everything. The forgeries, the payments traced back to your accounts, the instructions you gave him. Victoria's composure cracked. That's absurd. I never... There's also testimony from 3 witnesses who saw your representative at our ranch watching our son's bedroom window in the middle of the night. Clara's voice grew stronger with each word. Intimidation, Victoria, of a 5-year-old child. The crowd's murmurs turned ugly, but now they were directed at Victoria. This is a frame-up, Victoria snapped, a desperate attempt to deflect from Mrs. Ashford Cormac. The governor's voice cut through the noise. He held out his hand, and one of his aides placed a folder in it. I received these documents this morning, from the Wyoming Territory Attorney General. Victoria went pale. It seems there's been an ongoing investigation into financial irregularities connected to your late husband's estate. Funds that should have gone into trust for your son diverted into private accounts. Railroad investments made with company money without board approval. The governor's eyes were hard. Care to explain? For the first time, Clara saw real fear in Victoria's eyes. Those investments were legitimate. Edward has been dead for 5 years. The transactions I'm referring to happened last year. The governor turned to the crowd. Ladies and gentlemen, I apologize for this disruption. It seems this evening has exposed some uncomfortable truths, but not the ones Mrs. Ashford Cormac intended. 2 men in dark suits moved through the crowd toward Victoria. Mrs. Ashford Cormac, you'll need to come with us. There are questions that require answers. Victoria's mask shattered completely. Her eyes darted around the room, desperate, searching for allies, finding none. This isn't over, she hissed at Clara as the men reached her. This will never be over. Yes, it is. Clara met her gaze without flinching. You came after my family, my son. You tried to destroy everything I've built, and you failed. Victoria was led from the ballroom, and the doors closed behind her with a thud of finality. The silence lasted 3 heartbeats. Then the room exploded. People crowded around Clara and Eli, asking questions, offering congratulations, suddenly eager to be friends with the woman they'd been prepared to shun minutes before. Clara barely heard them. Her legs felt weak. Her hands wouldn't stop shaking. Eli's arm wrapped around her waist, holding her up. "You did it," he whispered against her ear. "We did it." "No." He pulled back to look at her, and his eyes shone with something that made her chest ache. "That was all you. The evidence, the timing, the courage to stand up there and fight. You saved us, Clara. I just told the truth. Sometimes that's the hardest thing in the world." He kissed her then, right there in front of everyone. And Clara didn't care about the gasps or the whispers or the scandal of it. She kissed him back. The rest of the evening passed in a blur. People who'd turned their noses up at Clara earlier now sought her out, eager to make amends. Invitations were extended, friendships offered, doors that had been firmly closed, suddenly swinging wide. Clara accepted it all with grace, but inside she felt hollow. Victoria was defeated. The threat was over. They'd won. So why couldn't she stop thinking about what came next? Around midnight, she slipped away from the ballroom and found a quiet alcove overlooking the street. The cool air felt good against her flushed skin. Hiding. She turned. Eli stood in the doorway, 2 glasses of champagne in hand. "Catching my breath." He handed her a glass and leaned against the wall beside her. "Hell of a night." "Hell of a night," she agreed. They stood in comfortable silence, watching carriages pass below. Clara. When we get home, there's something I want to ask you." Her heart quickened. "What?" "Not here." He smiled, soft and mysterious. "When we're home, just the 2 of us." "Eli Cormac, if you're trying to make me curious, is it working?" She laughed, surprising herself. "Maybe." He reached over and tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. "Good." They returned to the ballroom together, and for the first time all evening, Clara felt like she might actually belong there. The journey home took 3 days. 3 days of bouncing over rough roads, sleeping in way stations, watching the mountains grow larger on the horizon. 3 days of Eli's hand in hers, his shoulder pressed against her side, his voice in her ear, telling stories about the land they passed. Samuel had stayed at the ranch with Martha and the staff. Clara missed him fiercely, but she was grateful for this time alone with her husband. Her husband. The word felt different now. Warmer. More real. On the second night, they stayed at a small inn near the foothills. The room was simple, just a bed, a washstand, a window overlooking the stable yard. But when Eli closed the door behind them, it felt like the most intimate space in the world. "Clara." She turned from the window. He stood across the room watching her with those storm-gray eyes. His jacket was off, his collar undone. He looked younger somehow, softer. "What did you want to ask me?" she said quietly. He crossed to her in 3 long strides, took her hands in his. "When we got married, it was a business arrangement. You needed money. I needed a wife. Neither of us expected anything more. I remember. But things have changed. I've changed." He squeezed her hands. "Clara, I don't want this to be a business arrangement anymore. I don't want you sleeping in a separate room, keeping walls between us. I want—" He stopped, struggling for words. "What do you want, Eli?" "You." The word came out rough, almost desperate. "I want you. All of you. Not because of a contract or a deadline or what Victoria might do. Just you." Clara's eyes burned. Her throat tightened. "Say something," he whispered. "Please." She answered him the only way she could. She kissed him. And this time when he pulled her close, she didn't hold anything back. They arrived at the ranch the following afternoon. Samuel came running before the carriage even stopped launching himself at Clara the moment her feet touched the ground. "Mama, you're back." I missed you so much." "I missed you too, sweetheart." She held him tight, breathing in the smell of hay and sunshine. "Were you good for Grandma?" "Mostly." His grin was pure mischief. "I only broke one vase." "Samuel." "It was an ugly vase. Mary said so." Eli lifted the boy onto his shoulders, and Samuel shrieked with delight. Watching them together, her son and her husband laughing and happy, Clara felt something break open in her chest. This was her family now, her real family. Martha was waiting on the porch, thinner than before, but with color in her cheeks and light in her eyes. "Well," she demanded, "tell me everything. Did you put that awful woman in her place?" "Something like that." "I knew you would." Martha pulled Clara into a hug. "I'm proud of you, daughter. So proud." That evening, after Samuel was in bed and Martha had retired, Clara and Eli sat together on the porch. The stars were brilliant overhead, scattered across the sky like diamonds on velvet. The mountains rose dark against the horizon, solid and eternal. "I could get used to this," Clara said softly. "The stars. All of it. The ranch. The mountains. This life." She turned to look at him. "You." Eli's hand found hers in the darkness. "When I first saw you in that town, kneeling in the dirt with that empty bottle, I told myself I was just looking for a practical solution. A wife who'd meet the terms of my father's will. Someone strong enough to handle this life. And now I know I was lying to myself." He lifted her hand and pressed his lips to her palm. "I wasn't looking for a solution. I was looking for you. I just didn't know it yet." Clara felt tears prick her eyes. "Eli, there's something I need to tell you." He went still. "What?" "I'm pregnant." The words hung between them, fragile as spun glass. Eli stared at her. His face went through a dozen expressions in the space of a heartbeat: shock, disbelief, wonder, joy. Are you sure?" "The doctor confirmed it yesterday, before I left for Cheyenne." She laughed, though tears were streaming down her face. "I wanted to wait until the right moment to tell you. I didn't know if—" He kissed her before she could finish, deep and fierce and full of everything words couldn't express. When they finally broke apart, he pressed his forehead against hers. "A baby," he whispered. "We're having a baby. We're having a baby." He laughed. Then a real laugh, full and joyful. Nothing like his usual careful reserve. He picked her up and spun her around, and Clara shrieked and clung to his shoulders. "Put me down." "The baby. The baby will be fine. The baby's mother is the strongest woman in Wyoming." He set her down gently, still grinning. "God, Clara, you've given me everything. Everything I never knew I needed. You gave it to yourself when you walked up to a stranger in the dirt and offered her a chance. Best decision I ever made." She reached up and traced the scar on his cheek. "I love you, Eli Cormack." It was the first time she'd said the words out loud. The first time she'd let herself feel them fully. His eyes glistened. "I love you too, Clara Cormack. More than I have words to say." They stood there on the porch, wrapped in each other's arms, while the stars wheeled overhead and the future stretched before them, bright with possibility. 9 months of peace followed. Not perfect peace. There were still challenges, still obstacles, still days when the ranch demanded more than they had to give. But they faced everything together, and somehow that made all the difference. Martha grew stronger. The mountain air, the good food, the happiness that filled the house, it all worked together like medicine, better than any doctor could prescribe. "I've decided I'm not dying after all," she announced one morning at breakfast. "Too much to live for." Samuel started lessons with a tutor Eli hired from Denver. The boy was bright and curious, drinking in knowledge like a sponge. He still followed Eli everywhere, but now he also spent hours in the library surrounded by books. "He's going to be something special," Eli told Clara one evening, watching Samuel read by lamplight. Smart like his mother. Stubborn like his mother, you mean? That too. The codicil deadline came and went without fanfare. 1 year of marriage fulfilled. Victoria's claim on the inheritance died with it, along with whatever remained of her influence. Word came from Denver that she'd been convicted of fraud and embezzlement. Her son Frederick was placed with distant relatives far from Wyoming and the empire she'd tried to steal for him. Clara felt no satisfaction at the news, only relief that it was over. And then, on a crisp autumn morning, her water broke. The labor was long and hard. Hours of pain, of pushing, of wondering if her body could do what it needed to do. Eli paced outside the bedroom door, wearing a path in the floorboards. "Sir, you need to sit down," James told him. "You're making everyone nervous." "I can't sit. Something could be wrong. What if something's wrong?" "Mrs. Cormack is the strongest woman any of us have ever met. She'll be fine." But Eli kept pacing. Finally, near midnight, a thin wail split the air. The bedroom door opened. Mary stood there, exhausted but smiling. "Mr. Cormack, would you like to meet your daughter, his daughter?" Eli walked into the room on legs that felt like water. Clara lay in the bed, pale and drained, but radiant with joy. In her arms was a tiny bundle wrapped in white. "Come here," Clara whispered. "Come meet her." He crossed to the bed and looked down at the baby. She was perfect. Tiny fingers, a dusting of dark hair, eyes that blinked up at him with unfocused wonder. "She has your eyes," Clara said. "She has your strength." Eli reached out and touched the baby's cheek with one trembling finger. "What should we name her?" Clara smiled. "I was thinking, Hope." Hope. After everything they'd been through, the lies and the fear, the battles and the victories, the long road from a dusty street to this moment, it was the only name that made sense. "Hope Cormack," Eli said softly. "Welcome to the world, little one." The baby yawned, unimpressed by the weight of her name, and closed her eyes. Eli looked at Clara, his wife, the mother of his children, the woman who'd changed everything. "Thank you," he whispered. "For what?" "For saying yes. That day in the livery stable when you had every reason to say no." He leaned down and kissed her forehead. "You saved me, Clara. You saved all of us. We saved each other." He climbed onto the bed beside her, careful not to disturb the baby. Clara leaned into his warmth, her eyes already heavy with exhaustion. "I love you," she murmured. "I love you too, always." They fell asleep like that, the three of them together, while outside the window, the first snow of winter began to fall. Winter settled over the mountains, and with it came a peace Clara had never known. Hope grew stronger every day, her cries filling the house with life. Samuel took to his role as big brother, with fierce devotion, insisting on checking her cradle every morning before breakfast. "She smiled at me, Mama." "That's gas, sweetheart." "No, it was a real smile. I know it was." Clara didn't argue. Let him believe in magic a little longer. Martha thrived in her role as grandmother. The woman who'd been too weak to climb stairs 6 months ago now spent hours rocking Hope by the fire, singing old songs Clara remembered from childhood. "You've given me a reason to live," Martha told her one evening. "Both of you have. You gave yourself that reason, Mama. You fought for it." "Maybe, but I wouldn't have had anything to fight for without you." The ranch hummed along smoothly. Eli worked long days managing the cattle operation, but he always came home for supper, always made time to read to Samuel, to hold Hope, to sit with Clara on the porch and watch the stars come out. "Happy?" he asked one night, his arm around her shoulders. "Terrified," she admitted. "Of what?" "That I'll wake up and find out this was all a dream, that I'm still in that little house in Thornton Flat counting pennies and watching my mother die slowly." Eli pulled her closer. "This is real, Clara. I promise you. This is real." She wanted to believe him. Most days she did. But something nagged at the edges of her happiness. A feeling she couldn't shake, like storm clouds gathering on a distant horizon. The letter arrived on a Tuesday. Clara was nursing Hope in the parlor when James brought it in. The envelope was fine cream paper, the handwriting elegant and unfamiliar. "This came by special messenger, ma'am, from Denver." She shifted Hope to one arm and broke the seal. The words blurred together at first, then sharpened into focus. Her hand began to shake. "Ma'am, is everything all right? Find Eli." Her voice came out strange hollow. "Find him now." Eli burst through the door 20 minutes later, still dusty from the range. Clara James said. He stopped when he saw her face. "What happened?" She held out the letter. He read it in silence. His jaw tightened with each line. "This can't be right. It has the territorial seal. It's official. But Victoria's in prison. She can't—" "It's not from Victoria." Clara's voice cracked. "Read the signature." Eli looked again. His face went white. Frederick. Victoria's son, 12 years old, writing from Denver where his guardians had apparently given him access to lawyers and letterhead. The letter was brief and devastating. Frederick was contesting his mother's conviction, claiming the evidence against her had been manufactured. He was demanding a new trial. And until the matter was resolved, he was petitioning the court to freeze all Cormac assets. "He's a child," Eli said. "He can't do this. His guardians can, on his behalf." Clara took the letter back, her hands steadier now. "Someone's behind this. Someone with money and connections." "Who?" "I don't know, but we're going to find out." The next weeks were chaos. Lawyers descended on the ranch again, this time to defend rather than investigate. Clara spent hours in Eli's study poring over documents, searching for any weakness in Frederick's claims. The investigation Eli had commissioned months ago had been thorough. The evidence against Victoria was solid. But Frederick's lawyers weren't attacking the evidence directly. They were attacking the investigation itself. "They're claiming bias," Collins explained during one of many tense meetings, saying Mr. Cormac manufactured the charges against his sister-in-law to secure his inheritance. "That's absurd." Eli slammed his hand on the desk. "Victoria tried to destroy my wife. She stalked my stepson. I know, sir, but perception matters. And Frederick is a sympathetic figure, a child fighting for his imprisoned mother." Collins sighed. "The court has agreed to review the case." Clara felt the ground shifting beneath her feet. Everything they'd built, everything they'd fought for, it could all disappear if the court sided with Frederick. "What do we do?" she asked. "We fight," Eli said grimly. "Same as always." But this time Clara wasn't sure fighting would be enough. The hearing was scheduled for March, 3 months away. 3 months of waiting, worrying, watching their future hang in the balance. Clara threw herself into preparation. She reread every document, interviewed every witness, traced every connection she could find between Frederick's guardians and Victoria's old allies. The work consumed her. Hope's feedings became mechanical. Samuel's questions got one-word answers. Even Eli's attempts to comfort her fell on deaf ears. "You're going to make yourself sick," Martha warned one evening. "I don't have time to be sick." "Clara May Thornton Cormac." Martha's voice was sharp. "Look at me." Clara looked up from her papers. "When was the last time you slept? Really slept?" "I don't remember." "When was the last time you held your daughter for more than 5 minutes?" Clara's throat tightened. "When was the last time you told your husband you loved him?" "Mama!" "You're so busy fighting for your family that you're forgetting to live with them." Martha's eyes were fierce and tender. "Victoria wanted to destroy what you have. Don't do her work for her." The words hit Clara like cold water. She looked around the study, papers everywhere, empty coffee cups, candle stubs burned down to nothing. When had she last tucked Samuel in at night? When had she last felt Hope's weight in her arms without thinking about legal briefs? "I don't know how to stop," she whispered. "I know." Martha crossed to her and took her hands. But you have to try. Whatever happens in that courtroom, it won't matter if you've already lost what you're fighting for. That night, Clara left the papers in the study. She went to Samuel's room and sat on the edge of his bed. "Mama." He blinked up at her sleepily. "Is something wrong?" "No, sweetheart. I just wanted to see you." "You've been busy." "Too busy. I'm sorry." He reached up and patted her cheek. "It's okay. Mr. Eli says you're fighting the bad people. Like a knight." Clara smiled despite herself. "Did he say that?" "He says you're the bravest person he knows, braver than any cowboy." Her heart ached. "I don't feel very brave," she admitted. "That's okay." Samuel's voice was matter of fact. "Real brave people are always scared. That's what makes them brave." Out of the mouths of babes. Clara leaned down and kissed his forehead. "When did you get so smart?" "Books, and Mr. Eli." He yawned. "I love you, Mama." "I love you too, sweetheart, more than anything." She found Eli in their bedroom, holding Hope. The baby was asleep in his arms, her tiny fist curled around his finger. He looked up when Clara entered, and she saw exhaustion and worry and love written across his face. "She wouldn't settle," he said softly. "Wanted her mama, I think. She's got her papa instead." Clara crossed to them and touched Hope's cheek. "Looks like she's doing just fine." "Clara." "I'm sorry." The words came out in a rush. "I've been so focused on the case that I forgot what really matters. You, the children, us. I've been fighting so hard to keep our family together that I nearly tore it apart myself." Eli reached out with his free hand and pulled her close. "You don't have to apologize for caring. Caring isn't the same as obsessing. My mother was right. I've been doing Victoria's work for her." "Your mother's a smart woman." "She is." Clara leaned into him, breathing in the scent of hay and leather and home. "Eli, whatever happens at the hearing, I want you to know something." "What?" "Even if we lose everything, the ranch, the money, all of it, I'd still choose you. I'd still say yes in that livery stable. I'd still follow you into the mountains thinking you were just a poor horsebreaker with a patch of dirt." He was quiet for a long moment. "You mean that?" "Every word." He kissed her, then soft and deep, with their daughter sleeping between them. "We're not going to lose," he said against her lips. "But it's good to know." The hearing arrived faster than Clara expected. One day she was preparing the next, she was climbing into a carriage bound for Cheyenne. Martha stayed behind with the children. Samuel cried when they left and Clara almost turned around. But Eli's hand found hers steady and sure. "He'll be fine. Your mother will take care of him." "I know. I know." They rode in silence through the mountains, each lost in thought. The courthouse was packed when they arrived. Word had spread about the case. Half of Wyoming seemed to have turned out to watch the widow and the cattle baron fight for their empire against a 12-year-old boy. Clara ignored the stares. She'd had plenty of practice. Frederick sat at the front of the room with his guardians, a well-dressed couple Clara didn't recognize. The boy looked older than his years, his face set in lines of determination that reminded her painfully of Victoria. Collins leaned over. "Remember, let me do the talking. Don't let them provoke you." "I understand." The judge entered. An older man with a weathered face and sharp eyes. Judge Harrison, they'd been told. Fair but strict. No tolerance for theatrics. "We're here to review the conviction of Victoria Ashford Cormack," Harrison began. "Young Mr. Frederick Ashford Cormack, through his guardians, has petitioned for a new trial based on claims of manufactured evidence. Let's begin." The next hour was brutal. Frederick's lawyers were good. Very good. They didn't deny Victoria's crimes outright. Instead, they painted a picture of a grieving widow desperate to protect her son's future, manipulated by circumstances and pushed to extremes by her brother-in-law's cold indifference. They suggested Eli had wanted Victoria out of the way from the start, that he'd jumped at the chance to discredit her, that the evidence against her had been obtained through dubious means. Clara listened with growing fury. They were twisting everything, making Eli the villain, making Victoria the victim. When Collins rose to present their defense, she gripped the bench until her knuckles went white. Your Honor, the evidence against Mrs. Ashford Cormack was obtained through legitimate means and verified by independent experts. Mr. Harold Pemberton confessed under oath to forging documents at Mrs. Ashford Cormack's direction. 3 witnesses placed her representative at the Cormack Ranch engaged in surveillance that can only be described as stalking. Alleged surveillance. Frederick's lawyer interjected. Documented surveillance. We have sworn statements. The judge raised his hand. Continue, Mr. Collins. Collins did. Point by point, he dismantled the claims against their investigation. He presented records testimony, a paper trail that led directly to Victoria's door. But Clara could see the judge's face. He was listening, but he wasn't convinced, not entirely. Something was missing. During a brief recess, she pulled Eli aside. This isn't working. Collins is doing his best. His best isn't enough. The judge is sympathetic to Frederick. We need something more, something personal. Eli frowned. Like what? Clara's mind raced. What did they have that Frederick's lawyers couldn't dismiss as manufactured or biased? Then it hit her. The letter? What letter? The one Victoria sent me, before the ball, threatening to destroy me if I didn't leave you. Clara's heart pounded. I never showed it to Collins. I thought it was too personal. But Eli, it's in her handwriting, her own words, proof of her intentions. Where is it? In my jewelry box, at home. Eli went pale. That's a 3-day ride. One day if someone rides hard and takes the shortcut through Miller's Pass. That's dangerous. The pass is... I know what it is. Clara grabbed his hands. Send Henry. He knows the mountains better than anyone. If he leaves now, rides through the night, he can make it back before the judge rules. Eli stared at her. Then he nodded sharply. I'll find him. He disappeared into the crowd. Clara returned to the courtroom, her pulse racing. One letter, one piece of Victoria's own venom written in her own hand. It might be enough. It had to be enough. The hearing resumed. Clara sat through more arguments, more accusations, more attempts to paint her husband as a schemer and Victoria as a saint. She kept her face calm, but inside she was counting hours. How long until Henry reached the ranch? How long until he could return? Night fell. The judge adjourned until morning. Clara barely slept. Every sound outside made her jump. Every creak of the floorboard sent her heart racing. He'll make it, Eli told her in the darkness. How do you know? Because he has to. Morning came, then afternoon. The hearing dragged on. Clara watched the door, willing it to open, willing Henry to appear with the letter that would save them. The judge grew impatient. Mr. Collins, do you have anything further to add? Collins hesitated. Your Honor, we're expecting additional evidence. Expecting. This isn't a general store counselor. Either you have evidence or you don't. I understand, Your Honor, but... The courtroom doors burst open. Henry stumbled in, covered in dust and sweat, his face haggard from the ride. In his hand he clutched a small envelope. Your Honor. Clara stood before Collins could stop her. I have new evidence to present. The judge's eyes narrowed. Mrs. Cormack, this is highly irregular. I know, Your Honor, but this letter was written by Victoria Ashford Cormack herself, in her own hand. It proves beyond any doubt her intentions toward me and my family. Murmurs rippled through the courtroom. Approach, the judge ordered. Clara took the letter from Henry's trembling hand and carried it to the bench. The judge read it in silence. His face hardened with each line. This letter threatens you with destruction if you don't leave your husband. Yes, Your Honor. It references plans already in motion to discredit you. Yes, Your Honor. and it's signed by Victoria Ashford Cormack. Her signature, her handwriting, her words. Clara's voice rang clear through the silent room. Victoria wasn't a victim, Your Honor. She was a predator. She tried to destroy my marriage, terrorize my son, and steal my husband's inheritance. The evidence against her isn't manufactured. It's the documented truth of her own cruelty. The judge studied the letter for a long moment. Then he looked at Frederick. The boy sat frozen, his face pale. Whatever his guardians had told him about his mother, this letter told a different story. "Young man," the judge said quietly, "did you know about this?" Frederick shook his head slowly. His eyes glistened. "Your mother made choices that hurt people. Good people. People who were just trying to build a life." The judge's voice was not unkind, but it was firm. "I understand you love her. That's natural. But love doesn't excuse cruelty. It doesn't erase the harm she caused." Frederick said nothing. His guardians whispered urgently in his ears, but he didn't seem to hear them. The judge straightened. "Based on the evidence presented, including this letter, I find no grounds to overturn Victoria Ashford Cormack's conviction. The petition for a new trial is denied. Mrs. Ashford Cormack will serve her full sentence." He banged his gavel. "This court is adjourned." Clara's knees buckled. Eli caught her, held her up, pressed his face into her hair. "It's over," he whispered. "It's finally over." She wanted to believe him. But as they left the courtroom, she caught Frederick's eye. The boy stared at her with an expression she couldn't read. Grief. Something else. Whatever it was, Clara had a feeling this wasn't the last she'd hear from Victoria's son. They returned to the ranch as heroes. Word of the hearing had spread faster than wildfire. Neighbors who'd kept their distance now rode up with congratulations and gifts. The hands organized a celebration in the barn. Even Judge Harrison sent a formal letter commending Clara's courage in the courtroom. But Clara couldn't shake the memory of Frederick's face. "You're worrying again," Eli said one evening, finding her alone on the porch. "I can't help it. Frederick's a child. He can't hurt us. He won't be a child forever." Eli was quiet for a moment. Then he sat beside her and took her hand. "Clara, we can spend our whole lives looking over our shoulders, waiting for the next attack, the next threat, the next enemy. Or we can live, really live, raise our children, build our home, love each other. What if something happens? Then we deal with it, together, same as always." He squeezed her hand. "But we don't stop living because something might happen someday. That's not living. That's just waiting to die." She looked at him. This man who'd changed everything, who'd found her at her lowest and lifted her up, who'd fought beside her through every storm. "When did you get so wise?" "I married a smart woman. Some of it rubbed off." She laughed despite herself. "I love you, Eli Cormack." "I love you too, Clara Cormack. Forever." 5 years passed. Hope grew into a wild, fearless child with her father's eyes and her mother's stubborn streak. She rode horses before she could properly walk, climbed trees, scraped her knees, and laughed at everything. Samuel grew too, tall and serious, with a gift for numbers that made the ranch accountant nervous. He talked about going to college someday, studying engineering or law. "Whatever you want," Clara told him. "The whole world is open to you." "I know, Mama. You and Papa made sure of that." Martha lived longer than anyone expected. She spent her final years surrounded by grandchildren, telling stories, teaching songs, watching the family she'd almost lost grow stronger every day. When she passed, it was peaceful, in her sleep with Clara holding her hand. "She's with Papa now," Samuel said at the funeral. "And with my father too. All the people who loved her." Clara cried. But underneath the grief, she felt gratitude. Her mother had lived to see everything. The victory at Cheyenne, Hope's birth, Samuel's graduation from the little school on the ranch. Years of happiness, that never would have happened without Eli's unlikely proposal in a dusty livery stable. That was enough. That was more than enough. On their 10th anniversary, Eli took Clara to the top of the ridge overlooking the valley. The ranch spread below them, bigger now than when she'd first seen it. New barns, new fences, new families in the workers' cottages. A community built on fair wages and honest work. "Remember when I brought you here the first time?" Eli asked. "I thought I was marrying a poor horsebreaker. Then you showed me a kingdom." "It was never about the kingdom." He turned to face her. "It was about finding someone to share it with, someone real. And you found me, kneeling in the dirt with an empty medicine bottle. I found you, the bravest woman in Wyoming." Clara smiled. The fear that had lived in her chest for so long was gone now, burned away by years of love and struggle and triumph. "Eli." "Yeah. Thank you." "For what?" "For seeing me. When no one else did. When I couldn't even see myself." She reached up and touched his face, the face she knew better than her own now. "You saved my life that day. You saved mine right back." He kissed her palm. "That's what partners do." Below them, a horn sounded from the house. Supper time. Hope's laughter drifted up on the wind, followed by Samuel's deeper voice calling them home. Their family. Their future. Built from nothing but courage and hope and a stranger's unexpected kindness. Clara took Eli's hand. "Ready. Always." They walked down the hill together toward the home they'd built, the children they'd raised, the life they'd fought for and won. And Clara Cormack, who had once knelt in the dirt with nothing but 80 cents and a desperate prayer, knew in her bones that she was the richest woman in Wyoming. Not because of the land or the cattle or the money in the bank, but because she had learned the only truth that mattered. Love wasn't something you found. It was something you built day by day, choice by choice, through every storm and every sunrise. And what she and Eli had built would last forever.